So let's start by hopping in our time machine. History is just jam-packed with these incredible stories. But you'd be surprised how many of the most famous ones are built on some seriously shaky ground. It's time for a little reality check.
Okay, picture a Viking. Seriously, do it. I'm willing to bet you're imagining a big, burly warrior with a massive helmet, with horns sticking out of it, right? It's the go-to image. Well, you can just go ahead and delete that picture from your brain. It has absolutely zero basis in reality. Archaeologists have found tons of real Viking helmets, and guess what? They're simple, practical, bowl-shaped things made of iron. I mean, their job was to stop a sword, not give your enemy a convenient handle to grab onto.
So, if Vikings didn't actually wear them, where in the world did this idea come from? You're not going to believe this. It came from an opera. Yep, a Richard Wagner opera from the 1870s. The costume designer, a guy named Carl Emil Doppler, just decided that adding horns would make the characters look way more dramatic and fierce on stage. It was all for show, but that image was so powerful it basically rewrote history in our minds.
All right, let's move on to another larger-than-life historical figure who's famous for, well, for not being very large at all. We've all heard of the Napoleon complex, this idea that shorter guys are extra aggressive to make up for their height. But was Napoleon himself even short to begin with?
And the answer is nope, not at all. Napoleon Bonaparte was about 5'6". Now, that might sound a little on the shorter side to us today, but for a Frenchman in the early 1800s, that was completely, totally average. He wasn't short, he wasn't tall, he was just a guy. The entire psychological theory named after him is built on a complete myth.
So how did this whole thing get started? It was really the perfect storm of a simple math error and some very clever propaganda. See, his height was officially recorded as 5b de pouce using the old French measurement system. But the British, his biggest rivals, took that number and either misunderstood it or, and this is way more likely, on purpose, translated it as 5'2" in their system. That little mistake instantly made him sound much, much shorter than he was.
And they absolutely ran with it. British cartoonists like James Gilray just had a field day, constantly drawing him as this tiny, furious little man with huge ambitions. It was an amazing way to belittle their greatest enemy. And honestly, the propaganda worked so well, it's pretty much all anyone remembers today.
Now for a myth that's, well, out of this world. We've all heard it, right? The Great Wall of China is the only man-made thing you can see from space. The craziest part is that this idea was around long before anyone had even been to space. It started as just a wild guess back in the 1700s and then got popularized as fact in a book from 1938, decades before a human being ever left the planet.
But you know, once we actually got up there, the truth came out. Astronaut after astronaut, including China's very own first astronaut, Yang Liwei, all said the same thing. Nope, you can't see it. The problem isn't the length, it's the width. It's only about 25 feet wide, and it's made of stone and earth that look exactly like the landscape around it. It's like trying to spot a single brown thread on a giant brown rug from miles away. Ironically, you can see modern stuff like highways, airports, and definitely city lights at night way, way easier.
Oh man, this one is a Hollywood classic. You can picture it now, thousands of slaves being whipped while they drag these huge stones through the desert. It's become the ultimate symbol of ancient brutality. And it's just not true. So, how do we know? Well, the proof is literally buried in the sand. Archaeologists found the actual tombs of the pyramid builders, and they were buried with honor, right next to the pyramids themselves. That's a perk you would never give to a slave. Ancient records show they were a skilled, paid workforce. They ate well, we're talking prime beef and beer every day. And they even had on-the-job medical care. We found skeletons with broken bones that were properly set by doctors. This wasn't slave labor. This was a massive, respected national project.
Okay, so we've covered human history. Let's switch gears and talk about the animal kingdom. It's full of amazing creatures, but our ideas about them are often colored by some really stubborn and really wrong myths.
You know this one, the brave matador, the swirling red cape, the furious charging bull. It's probably one of the most famous images of animal behavior there is. But the whole idea that the bull is angry at the color red, total myth.
And here's the simple science. Bulls, like a lot of mammals, are what we call dichromats. Basically, it's a type of color blindness. They don't have the red-detecting cone cells in their eyes. So that bright scarlet cape the matador is waving, To the bull, it's probably just a dull grayish-yellow color. So what's actually making them so mad? It's the movement. That's it. The quick, aggressive, flapping motion is what the bull sees as a threat. It triggers its instinct to defend itself. Seriously, the matador could be waving a blue cape, a green one, a sparkly one. As long as it's moving in that threatening way, the bull is going to charge. The red is purely for the human audience. It's dramatic, and it also does a good job of hiding the blood. Ah, the age-old insult, you've got the memory of a goldfish. We all know what it means. You're super forgetful. The myth is that these little fish forget everything every 3 seconds, just swimming in a constant loop of, oh, hey, a castle. But what if I told you that's not even close to being true? In reality, scientific studies show that goldfish can remember things for months. And they're not just remembering random stuff either. These fish are surprisingly smart. You can actually train them to navigate little underwater mazes to get food. They can learn to recognize their owner's face. They can even be taught to associate a certain sound with feeding time. So yeah, that little guy on your fishbowl probably remembers you way better than you give him credit for. This one's pretty dark. The image of hordes of lemmings blindly following each other off a cliff to their doom. It's become this big metaphor for people who just follow the crowd no matter what. But the whole idea is a complete and total lie. And the real story behind this myth is, well, it's pretty awful. It all started with a 1958 Disney nature film called White Wilderness. To get the dramatic shot they wanted, the filmmakers didn't just stumble upon this happening in nature. They literally took a bunch of lemmings and shoved them off a cliff into a river. It wasn't suicide, it was staged animal cruelty, all for a movie. Thanks to movies like Jaws, sharks might be the most misunderstood animal in the entire ocean. Two of the biggest myths you always hear are that they can smell one drop of blood from miles away and that they're somehow immune to cancer. And both of those are wrong.
Let's just break that down. First, their sense of smell. Look, it's incredible. Don't get me wrong. They can detect blood at a concentration of about 1 part per million. That's like 1 drop in a small swimming pool. That's amazing. But it's not the superpower of smelling a single drop from miles and miles away. And as for the cancer myth, that one's not just false, it's actually dangerous. That belief has created a huge, bogus market for shark cartilage pills, which do nothing for people, and has led to the overfishing of sharks. The simple truth is, sharks can and do get cancer, just like other living things.
All right, we've looked at history, we've looked at animals, now let's turn the microscope on ourselves. I mean, we live in these bodies 24/7, but some of the most common facts we believe about them are completely off.
Okay, this might be the king of all myths. It's been the plot of so many movies and books, the idea that we humans only use a measly 10% of our brains. And if we could just unlock the other 90%, we'd become psychic super geniuses. It's a really cool idea, right? But it's 100% fiction. The reality is you use all of your brain, pretty much all the time. And the evidence is just overwhelming. Modern brain scans show activity all over the brain, even when we're just resting. Plus, think about it from an evolutionary perspective. Your brain uses up a ton of your body's energy, like 20% of your calories. Why would evolution create such an expensive organ if we weren't even using 90% of it? And if the myth were true, brain damage wouldn't be a big deal. But as we know, even a tiny bit of damage can have devastating effects.
I think every single person who's ever started shaving has been warned about this one. But no, shaving does not make your hair grow back thicker or darker or faster. It's just an illusion. See, when you shave, you're cutting the hair off flat at the skin's surface, creating this blunt tip. A natural hair gets thinner at the end, so when that blunt, shaved hair starts to grow out, it just feels more stubbly and coarse, and the flat end can look a little darker, but the hair follicle itself is totally unchanged. Oh, this is the classic mom warning, right? Put on a jacket or you'll catch your death of cold. Or don't go outside with wet hair. It just feels right, doesn't it? The link between being cold and getting a cold seems like basic common sense. But sorry, Mom, it's just not true. The common cold is caused by a virus, a rhinovirus to be specific. The only way to get a cold is for that virus to get into your body. Being chilly or having wet hair doesn't magically create a virus. So why does everyone get sick in the winter? It's pretty simple. Because it's cold outside, we all spend more time huddled together inside, sharing the same air and making it super easy for viruses to jump from person to person. So, we've torn down myths about Vikings and lemmings and our own brains, but that brings up a much bigger question. Why do we believe this stuff in the first place? Why are these myths so sticky?
Well, as we've seen, they come from all over the place. Sometimes it's a simple mistake, like the bad math with Napoleon's height. Other times it's completely intentional, like Disney making up a story about lemmings or the British creating propaganda. And sometimes, like with the myth that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, it was just a really, really good marketing slogan by a cereal company. And honestly, some myths just stick around because the story is just too good. I mean, who doesn't want to believe they have 90% of their brain just waiting to be unlocked? But here's what I think is the coolest part. When you actually dig in and debunk the myth, the real story, that messy mix of history, science, and human behavior, is almost always more fascinating than the simple fiction we were told. The truth actually teaches us something about how the world really works.
And that really is the whole point. Knowing that all these big, common facts are actually wrong should make us a little more curious. It should make us want to think a little more critically about the things we hear. So the question I want to leave you with is this. What else do you believe is true, just because you've always heard it? And maybe, shouldn't you find out for sure?